They are fueled by an anger that has inflamed generations, downing statues of the Queen and those who went before her. Monarchs who reigned during the darkest part of Canada's past, when those who were first on this land were seen as a stain upon it by those who sought a future without them.
The peaceful transfer of power, the cornerstone of American democracy, seemed a highly abstract concept today, as Trump supporters clashed with police as they tried, and succeeded, to storm the Congress, where America's elected leaders had gathered to certify the election victory of Joe Biden.
Buildings on fire in Pointe-à-Pitre in the Caribbean archipelago of Guadeloupe. This is French overseas territory, and after nearly a week of civil unrest here, the government in Paris is sending reinforcements.
Marica, minuto 44:20. ¿Qué pasó? Le metieron un ladrillazo, tumbaron a un policía y le metieron un ladrillazo, los cogieron, marica.
Paraguay ha vivido una noche de violentos enfrentamientos en el marco de las protestas contra la gestión de la crisis del coronavirus. Los choques registrados frente al Congreso en el centro de Asunción dejaron al menos una veintena de heridos, una docena de ellos policías.
Highways are no longer safe. Countless agricultural equipment has been destroyed, while Mapuche communities take over land. A Chilean farmer was the latest to die last week after his house was set ablaze by an armed group. Conservatives applauded the state of emergency, saying it was long overdue.
Hadarichum means wake up in the local Quechua indigenous language. And here in the province of Cotopaxi in Ecuador, it is what indigenous leaders are asking their people to do.
Thousands of Peruvians rallied in the streets of the capital Lima on Saturday as uncertainty swirls around the results of a tight presidential election held nearly 3 weeks ago. Supporters of socialist Pedro Castillo marched toward the Plaza San Martin near the country's election headquarters. Just a few blocks away, thousands of supporters of right-wing rival Keiko Fujimori paraded with Peruvian flags and signs that read "No to Fraud."
It was a sentiment expressed by many. Why are people looting? No food, no nothing, no work, he said. But you can't eat a bicycle. I can, he responded. The trouble was triggered by the arrest of the former president, Jacob Zuma, last week. But it has been fueled by frustration in a country where millions are struggling in the midst of the pandemic.
The small kingdom of Eswatini has been gripped by civil unrest since May this year. There are regular demonstrations against King Mswati III. In this country, where opposition parties have been banned since 1973, the opposition demands democracy. They even demonstrated at the American embassy.
The protest started peacefully, with demonstrators chanting pro-democracy songs. There was heavy police presence, some officers even moving alongside the small crowd, until the first cordon was breached. Then the security forces lobbed rounds of tear gas at the protesters. The crowd, including dozens of journalists, had to run to find safety. Police then fired gunshots into the air.
This was very much a government rally organized by the mayor's office in Addis Ababa. But thousands of people turned up at Meskel Square, carrying placards that expressed their anger at Tigray's TPLF leadership and its forces that many here refer to as junta, and support of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government and its federal army.
There were mass rallies in Armenia's capital, Yerevan, with both opponents and supporters of embattled Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan taking to the streets, while Mr. Pashinyan has himself led thousands of his supporters through the streets, denouncing what he called an attempted military coup after Armenia's armed forces demanded his resignation. Pashinyan has faced months of protests since Armenia's defeat by Azerbaijan in the conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh last year.
Comes amid growing frustration among many pro-British unionists. at new post-Brexit trade barriers between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom. Crowds of youths in a pro-British area of Belfast set a hijacked bus on fire and attacked police with stones Wednesday evening.
Violent unrest erupted for the second night in the Netherlands. Rioters were seen hurling fireworks at police, and there were blazing bicycles in The Hague. 5 police officers have been injured and at least 40 people arrested. The Netherlands imposed a 3-week partial lockdown last weekend after recording nearly 20,000 daily cases, their highest infection rate since the pandemic began. Parallel scenes occurred in Brussels as water cannon and tear gas were fired at protesters as tens of thousands marched against COVID restrictions. Thousands gathered in Croatia over the weekend against mandatory vaccinations for public sector workers.
Thousands marched through Warsaw's city centre carrying placards with slogans such as "My body, my choice" and "Not one woman more."
This is what heavy weapons do to people's lives in eastern Ukraine. It was 1 a.m. when the shelling started. Nelly and her husband were fast asleep. They woke, buried under the rubble of their home. and they were rescued by their neighbors.
We woke and our home had been completely destroyed around us. I prayed that if we were to die, then please God make it quick. I have been in so much emotional pain. I wanted to die. We had everything we needed in life. Now it's gone. People try to comfort us, but it's so very hard to cope.
After almost 3 decades of peace, the prospect of war is being discussed by many people. The reason, statements and apparent attempts by leading politicians here in Bosnia's Serb enclave of Republika Srpska, threatening to withdraw from state institutions, including the National Army, paving the way for cessation. After the UN's top official warned the country could break apart, the United States sent its envoy to the region, meeting Bosnia's 3-member presidential council, as well as other Serb leaders.
The sound of gunshots as security forces use bullets to disperse protesters. People here are demonstrating against severe water shortages in one of Iran's hottest regions. Temperatures in the southwestern province reach up to 50 degrees Celsius, so people are gathering at night.
Why are you shooting? They haven't taken your land. They haven't taken your water. Listen to me. We want peaceful protests.
Latest round of protests that have taken place, launched to put pressure on the Pakistani government. And believe it or not, this is what the people in Pakistan are protesting against for. And this is the size of the rallies, of the number of people who have come out onto the streets. They're demanding basic health and education infrastructure for the people in Balochistan. These are the demands that have been put forth by the people.
It's been 2 months of scenes like this. Daily protests met with violence by security forces, and the military coup gets more deadly by the week. Over 500 people have been killed, dozens of them children.
Such scenes have now become a daily occurrence in this neighborhood. For more than a month now, this Dindeng intersection, some 20 minutes from downtown Bangkok, has become a battlefield between police and protesters calling on the government to quit. Regular citizens are caught.
New Zealand reported 27 new cases of the highly infectious Delta coronavirus variant in Auckland on Saturday as protesters took to the streets to rally against an almost 2-month lockdown in the country's biggest city. Auckland is home to 1.7 million residents. They're expecting a government decision on Monday about whether the city will remain sealed off from the rest of New Zealand. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern enforced what was meant to be a short and sharp nationwide lockdown in mid-August in response to the Auckland outbreak. But while the rest of the country has largely returned to normal life, the North Island city has remained in lockdown for about 7 weeks.
Anger boils over in Melbourne. These protesters want their freedoms back. The city is in its 6th lockdown. Now the restrictions have been extended to the entire state. Frustration is also mounting in Sydney. Despite being more or less shut down for 8 weeks, the majority of Australia's coronavirus cases are being recorded there. The health minister issued a stern warning.
Unrest and defiance on the streets of Honiara. What started as a peaceful protest took a violent turn.
Now we have buildings burning down at both ends of the town.
Buildings torched and looted by rioters, the local police force struggling to keep protesters at bay.